So that's a conflict.
Maybe if it's only the same guy. Right? If he forgot it and then he finds it.
Yeah, you find it.
Then it's not a conflict. Right? Yes, he did. Okay, I'm gonna gradually start our learning sponsors. Friends of Nina, a year of learning, Friends of Nina Monester, Nechama Asna Bad Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, Lezecha Nishmat Simcha Melech Ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. Isaac and Evelyn Blachor in memory of his sister, Chaya Rachel Bas Isser. A month of learning by Gary and Marsha Schwager in memory of his father, David Ben Yosef, and his mother, Freda Bas Hendel. Marsha Federbush in memory of her husband, Oriel Pinchas Ben Arav Shimon. Andrea and David Dolmy in memory of her father, Tzvi Herschel Hillel Ben Abraham. Del Bloodlander in memory of his father, Tzvi Ben Yaakov Yitzchak, his mother, Bela Devasha Bas Harav Del Beresh, his father-in-law, Yehuda Tzvi Ben David Nachum, and his mother-in-law, Alta Chaya Bas Avram Yosef. Mel and Haran Hallam in memory of his father, Avram Ben Zev. A week of learning by Judy Iger in memory of her son, Yerachmiel Ben Aharon. A day of learning today, gentlemen, Lily and Ziv in memory of her husband, Yosef Ben Yaakov Shlomo. Also today, a day of learning by Jack and Zena Payson in memory of his mother, Reza Leah Bas Avraham Moshe. Okay. We also are still keeping in mind Peretz Semach Ben Yaakov Yitzchak and the Bachur Moshe Ruben Ben Sima Tevla, as well as all those others individuals that we've been saying the Refuah Shlema for. May Neshama have an Aliyah, Kranka Rafia Velti Yeshir Shema Tzliya, L'chol B'nai Israel, a good Gaben Shtiah.
Do we have an extra, Steve?
Yeah, I'm gonna pull out. Steve, you need a Gemara, right?
You are who? Okay. Yeah.
You want it?
That's Steve
Huh?
Phillips.
You want the regular Gemara or you want something with English?
Something would take, if you have. Thank you, Rabbi.
What is your name, sir?
Steve Phillips.
Steve Phillips. I'm Jeff Kipperman.
Depends what you're talking about. I can tell you how I do.
Well, don't tell me the truth.
But we can't handle the truth. Okay, yeah, I have a hard time with Kipperman. Jeff Kipperman.
And it's no Greenbaum. Moshe Yosef Akohen.
That's Zev Kipperman Shlita.
Shlita.
No, that's
With
I don't
Shlita,
think that's
you don't
Shlita.
say that for people.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
I mean,
Shlita, yes, he
he's
should live
just-
and be well.
And you
I'm
can also
bang.
give him an Amish if you want.
I didn't know if he was Amish.
Amish means you should live to 120.
I'd maybe yet to
120.
Steve Phillips.
Yeah. Screwdriver.
You just moved here?
No, my mother's lived here for about.
Oh,
20
so you're visiting
20
her?
Yeah.
Here, I'll give him mine.
Yeah. And what do you want to use the
I
regular?
did it already.
Yeah, but you can use.
I can
the
take a
Gemara.
real Gemara.
You can use-
Oh, I've used that
Yeah.
before. It's corn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you so much. Makes you really good trouble.
Okay, we'll check where we are and then we'll get underway.
This is corn. I've used
No, I'm looking at Grateful Dead. He does the
I just did the Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead.
Really?
No, we're grateful for
That-
that for those who are
I
remembering.
understand, but we're grateful that they're back because we're getting money.
That's how we have to explain it, Reb Mordechai.
I was gonna say, the definition of a board.
You're getting better and
Trying to
better.
ask someone how he feels and really tells.
I really on my game.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I really
I
need
am
to
not
hear
really-
your
yeah.
full story.
Okay, gentlemen.
So I'm not following in, no, I'm not following.
Okay,
You
so
are
I'm-
so much better.
I want to pick up really on the very bottom of Samech Vav Amud Beis, okay, where we're talking about Nakdimon Ben Gurion, and the Gemara was trying to question if the story is such that he lost all of his money, okay, why is that the case? In particular, if he was such a good person and did acts of tzedakah. So that's where we're leading into. Okay, so the Gemara then picked up and says, Amru alav al Nakdimon ben Gurion, k'shehaya yotzei mibitau levet midrash, then he would leave his house and go to the base midrash. Klei milat hayu matzein tachtav, that they would spread fine woolen garments on the ground as he would walk out. Okay, and what would happen? Now we're on Samach Zion, which is today's daf. Okay, on the right, and what would happen? Uba'in aniyim umakpilin otan me'achorav. And the poor people would come and they would fold them and
They would take them.
they would take those garments and they would use those garments for their own. Okay. So that's sort of where we left off. And then the Gemara picks up. Ibayat Ema. So in other words, isn't this an example of an act of tzedakah on his part? And if so, why should he have lost
All his money.
all his money? Okay. So the Gemara raises a couple possibilities. Ibayat Ema. If you want, I would say as follows. L'chvodo hu da'avad. Okay, that he did it for his own honor, his own glory, things like that. In other words, it really wasn't a proper act of tzedakah. V'bayat eman, if you want, I would say as follows: K'debayile leme'abad lo avad. Okay, the Gemara is saying because basically, given what he could have been giving, he didn't give. Okay, and as he didn't do what he was capable of really doing, is the Gemara's answer here. Second answer, K'da'amrei inshe, and as people say, Lafum gamla shichana tanya. According to the strength of the camel, so goes the burden. Okay, and that's the point. Okay, so that was the case. All right, Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Now we pick up new piece. And really, a lot of today's daf is going to focus on the theme of tzedakah. Okay, so we'll see a number of examples of that, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to have to deal with the question that preceded our whole discussion here, is the fact that we've said that when the woman brings a certain amount of items into as part of the dowry, the groom must then adjust the ksuba in some way. Okay, it would appear, what?
That stuff is some bars.
Right, it would appear, okay, that the Gemara is going to suggest to us that normally it's 1/5 that he adjusts to in the ksuba, depending upon what she brings in. Now, there are two kinds of things that she could bring in. As Michael's suggesting, she could bring in sewn barzel. She can bring in what I'll call for the moment solid property. Okay, all right. Or she can bring in theoretically metaltalin also. Okay. So as the Gemara proceeds,
Some bars are usually used.
one second. Okay. So as we'll proceed, we'll see the question is about some other aspects. You wanted to make a quick.
No, just some bars are always mixed in. if it's land, it's workable or rentable.
I don't hold by that. Okay. All right. That the karka is metaltalin? No.
No, karka is nichse malod. Objects or non or money are its own barzell. So metaltalin are all.
We'll see. I think the Gemara doesn't come that clear on that. We'll see. Okay. All right. So what happens? So we now come to the following. Amar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Tzadok says in the name of Rabbi Tzadok, our Abba Nechama, I'm going to see with such consolation. And we're going to see another story about the daughter of Nakdimon here. Okay. Im lo re'ita shahaita melaketet seorim mi bein talfei susim ba'atam. Okay. With such consolation that had I not seen it myself, seeing her collect again barley, this time from the hoofs of horses that were in Akko. Okay. Karati aleh mikrazeh. I would have referred in this situation to the following pasuk. Im lo teid ilach hayafa benashim, se'ilach be'ikvei hatzon, ure'i et gediotai. Okay, so the pasuk being, if thou know not, or thou fairest among women, go thy way forth by the footsteps of the flock, feed the kids. Okay. All right. So in other words, she's following after the animals to be able to take
They
care.
know where grass is.
Right?
So
Take
she
care
can
of
get
his. Okay.
rain.
So what happens? Al tikra gedotaich, ela goy gevoy taich. Don't read it as the statement of following the kids, the animals, but for your bodies. In other words, she has got to follow these animals in order to find food for herself, for her own well-being. Okay. Now, as we come back now to this question of how does the groom, okay, when he records the dowry vis-a-vis the ketubah, does he record it in a situation that he has to reduce, as we've said, or is it equivalent? Okay, depending on what she's bringing into the dowry. Okay, and one of the questions we're going to deal with particularly is gold. Okay, now, why should there be a question of gold? All right, does gold fluctuate? Okay.
Well, then not in those.
Okay, the question is we're going to see as we start this Gemara is, and I'm going to phrase it this way in particular. Okay, there could be, we know today that most gold that's identified as a support or basis for cash is usually gold bars. Okay, or ingots, think of Fort Knox and all the stories like that. Okay, however, okay, you could have gold coins.
Or gold jewelry.
Could jewelry. I prefer to use the example. Well, that's why I'm going to get to it. All right, I prefer the example of gold coins because if you have an ingot, let's say, you don't usually carry that around and bring it to the bank and say, can you change this for me for X amount of money? Okay, exactly. Okay, it's not easily transferable as a exchange, commercial exchange. What?
Yeah, but in those days it was.
Okay, but you could have gold coins that could be a legal tender, okay, for commercial, okay, that could theoretically, I said, be changed and used.
And then you could also have gold kalim, jewelry or.
Yeah, I don't know if they would use that. Okay, so what happens? So keeping that in mind as the background for our Gemara, we can now pick up. Okay, Amar Rav Shemin bar Abba Amar Rabbi Yochanan. In the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ichnisa lo zahav. Okay, if she brought in as part of the dowry, I'm going to say items from gold. Now, the reason I'm saying items is we don't know. It could be jewelry, it could be coins, it could be who knows what. What happens? Samin oto. We make an approximation, an assumption there. Okay, we appraise it. Let's put it that way. Vaharehu kishavav. And we base it then on what its value is. Meitivi.
That she would put 150%.
Well, we'll get to that right momentarily. Metive, but we challenge this. Hazahav, harehu kekelim. But our Braita, there's a Braita here that says that bringing in gold is similar to bringing in utensils. Now, at this point, the Gemara doesn't tell us for sure whether utensils here refer to gold utensils or where it's referring to the more common use of silver utensils. Okay? So, my love kelim shel kesef, the pachte. Isn't it then, aren't you saying when you say that gold is like utensils, that it's similar to silver utensils and they can diminish? And if they can diminish, then they're equal to any other kinds of goods that are brought in. Okay? Lo, no, says the Gemara. Kekelim shel zahav. No, we're talking here about gold utensils, and therefore the gold is to be appraised at its true value. Velo de lo pachte. And they don't diminish. Im kain, if that's the case, then what our Braita should have said is instead of kekelim, kekelav mebayele. That's how our Braita should have been worded, and therefore that would again help us understand that we're talking about gold utensils and they're to be appraised at their true value. Okay, which would then affect what he has to put in his ksuba. Okay.
What are they assuming that gold had a fixed value and it always stays
Yeah.
the same?
Okay, that would seem to be the case. Okay, the
And
Gemara
other
is.
thing is that when you use gold,
Well, we're going to
rare.
get to that, right? We're going to get to that shortly, right?
Okay.
Further down the
that's-
Amud.
Right.
Further
Just be
down
aware
the
of that.
Amud, the Gemara is going to bring us examples where it's very possible, okay, that the gold can
Physically diminished.
it can be reduced. That's the word here that the Gemara is using, pachte, can be reduced depending on what we'll call for the moment the quality of the item or the form too. Okay. All right. Well, it could be both. All right. Va'od. And furthermore, says the Gemara, Tanya, we have another Braita that says, and notice this Braita now is going to have two statements. Okay. Statement number one, Zahav harehu kekelim, that bringing gold in as part of the dowry is going to be similar to bringing in utensils. Second part of the Braita, dinare zahav harehein kiksafim, and that if you have, I'm going to say here, dinar is a coin. So if you have gold coins, they are like cash. That's what it's saying. Okay. Now what happens? So two parts to that Braita. What happens? Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer. He's responding to that Braita. Okay. B'makom shenahagu shelo leportan, in a place where it wasn't their custom to change or exchange. Okay. All right. Samin otan. Then we have to appraise the value of that gold. V'harehein b'shaviahen, and they are going to be considered then, okay, in that situation, right, according to their value. Okay, right. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel ahiyah. And so the Gemara asks Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's comment about, we're talking about a location where the money isn't where that gold isn't easily changed or exchanged, okay? And we assess it basically that way. Okay, what part of the Braita is he referring to? The earlier part of the Braita, the first statement, where he said basically, Zahav Harehu Kakelim, or is he referring to the Seifa, the later part of the Braita, where he's saying, Dinare Zahav Harehein Kiksafim? Okay? All right, now we can go on. Ilema Asefa. If we're saying that he's referring to the later part of the Braita, namely Dinare Zahav Harehein Kiksafim, Miklal de Tanakama Savar, Afilu b'makom shenahagu shelo leportan. Does this mean then that we can assume that Tanakama is of the opinion that even in a place that occurs, even in a place where they do have the custom to exchange that gold? Okay, that they do not have the custom to exchange that gold? Ha lo nafke. We're saying here, okay, if that money that's not usable, it's not functional as cash. That's the point. Okay, if they can't exchange it, it's not functional as cash, right? Elelav, but rather we have to say, isn't it not the case that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel's comment, Aresha, it's on the first part of the Braita. Okay? Vahachi ka'amar. And this is what he means to be telling us. Zahav harehu kekelim, that bringing the gold into the dowry is like bringing utensils. My kelim, what do we mean here by utensils? Kelim shel kesef, utensils from silver. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, and he says, Harehu kedinarim shel zahav b'makom shenahagu shelo leportan. Does this mean that he's saying that they are like silver pieces, gold pieces, I'm sorry, in a place, okay, that they do not have the
Gold is not cash.
okay, not usable as money, as exchange, all right, as currency. Thank you. Okay, lo, no, says the Gemara, leolam asefa. No, what he must be referring to, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, is the end part of the Braita. Udenafke al yedei hadocha. Okay, and what happens is he's explaining that it can be used as currency, but with difficulty. That's the problem. Okay, ubaha kamiflage, and this is what they're really arguing about. Mar savar kevan denafke mashbachinan lai. One master holds that since they are able to exchange it, change it, even with difficulty, nevertheless, we increase the value of the gold dinars for the wife in the dowry. And therefore, the husband has to increase the sum in the ksuba. Okay, that's the point. Umar savar kevan delo nafke ela al yedei hadocha. And the other master holds, since he is not able to exchange the money, okay, easily, because it's done, not many people are able to do that, changing the gold. Lo mishbachinan le, that we do not increase the value either towards the dowry or towards the ksuba. Okay, ibayat ema, or if you want.
No, in the dowry, it's down.
You don't increase it by half until it goes back. They do increase it by a bit, but they don't.
No, we don't increase it.
Not at all. Not at all. Okay. All right. So the Gemara comes back now and says they buy it. So that was one attempt to explain Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel's comment on the Braita. Then now the Gemara is going to say, well, I'm going to suggest another possible explanation for Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay? As follows. Ibayat Ema. If you want, I would say as follows. Kula Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel here. The whole Breita is based on Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. V'chasuri michsura v'hachi katani. And here we're saying something is missing, okay, in the language of this Breita, and this is how we have to understand and teach it. Zahav harehu kekelim. Gold is considered like utensils. Dinare zahav harehein kiksafim. And gold pieces, okay, gold coins, okay. I keep thinking
Gold pieces.
pieces of eight. Well, that's later on, right? Okay, I understand. Well, I will get to that difference. Okay, I have a different shot on that a little bit. Okay, all right. So gold coins, okay, are considered like cash. B'med varim amurim, b'makom shenahagu leportan. We're talking about a place where it was their normal custom to exchange, to use it as currency. Aval b'makom shenahagu shelo leportan. But in a place where it was not their custom to normally use it as currency, samim otan, okay, we appraise them, v'harei hein b'shavyehen, and then they are considered on their value. Divrei Rabbi, right? Divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and that's the word of Shimon ben Gamliel. Why? Sharaban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, because he says, "B'makom shenahagu shelo leportan," in a place where they did not have the practice of using the gold as currency. Okay, samin otan, we appraise them. V'harehen b'shavyehen, and they are based on their ongoing value. Mikomakom, nevertheless, says the Gemara, kekelav mabayele. Okay, it still should have said in that language, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel still should have used saying it by its own, okay, keli, kasha, and therefore it's problematic. You buy it, Ema. If you want, then I'll say as follows. Hacha b'mayeskina. What are we talking about then? Okay. Bidahava parecha. Okay. What are we talking about here? Maybe we're talking about gold dust. Okay.
The first one is gold nuggets.
Nuggets. Well, okay. Pieces of gold.
Gold
Pieces. V'rav ashyamar b'mamela. Okay. And
That's gold dust.
okay. And that could be gold dust.
So
Okay.
when you handle it.
So the issue is based on the fact that if you take small pieces of gold, okay, or gold dust, what's going to happen? It's certainly going to diminish. It's going to rub off. So in other words, much the same way that the silver kalim would also diminish from over time and use. Cohen had actually a scientific explanation. Okay, hydrogen sulfate and all this kind of stuff. I'm not going to go into it. Okay, all right. But the point is, the handling of certain gold is going to reduce its value. Okay, the same way silver kalim, silver utensils would be reduced in value because of their ongoing use. Okay, all right. Anybody who has at home silver knows that overextended use, it begins to tarnish, and that's an example. Okay,
when you polish off the tarnish, you rub off silver.
That happens. Okay, all right. You buy it in. Okay, so again, I might say as follows. Hacha b'mayis kinan, what are we dealing about? All right, so we did that. But the hava precha, Rav Ashi Amar b'mamal. Okay, now, Amar Rabbi Yanai. Says Rabbi Yanai, he's going to start a series of examples of other items that are apparently very, I don't want to say costly, but of certain value, okay? And therefore, since you brought up the example of gold that may impact on the dowry and the ksuba, the Gemara is now going to bring us other examples of items that could be involved.
Will earn money in the
Okay,
future,
that
so
will
they-
bring in a certain, that will have an impact on the dowry value and on the ksuba value. That's the point. Yeah, Ted.
This value of the gold or whatever can be used, the amount of money that's required in the kasuba, or it's above
Okay.
the straight amount.
I'm going to explain it one way. Michael might explain it a little differently. I'm going to say she's bringing items in as part of the dowry. He has to adjust the ksuba, okay, accordingly. Okay, is that I think that's, as we've seen already that the Gemara says that in most cases, it's about a 1/5 less that he includes in the ksuba to what she brings in.
If it's an object that will just simply sit there, a coat or a silver kiddush cup, then if it's worth 100, the husband puts in the kasuba. If I
He has to
divorce
put
you,
in a 10th.
I'll give you 8. You'd reduce it by a fifth, which is really a fourth. But if it's cash money, then presumably the husband will utilize that in his business, or he'll lend it, but and someone else will do after Iska. So over time, that money will grow the estate's value. So in the kasuba, we don't know if he'll live a year or live 100 years. So in the kasuba, we simply add 50%. So if she brings $1,000, he has to promise to give her back $1,500. If she brings a kiddush cup worth $1,000 or a mink coat worth $1,000, he has to give back 1/5 less.
He or she with currency has fluctuation.
Yeah, but they consider currency fixed until 1933. Gold never changed price. It was always 1 ounce equals $20. But today, or 30, whatever, today gold changes every day because it's a commodity. It's no longer cash.
It's not traded. What I was saying, what you're explaining, in one case it will increase.
Correct.
The
If
other
the
case,
gold
the
is money,
fluctuation, yeah.
if the
Yeah.
gold is money, he has to increase the kasuba accordingly. If the gold is a keli, an object, then that he reduces it accordingly. So the gold, you weigh the gold jewelry
Right.
and you write in less, but you deposit the gold coins and you write in more.
Think of it as the fact that the gold coins it's a commodity that can be exchanged, and so therefore it can be used.
No, that's the debate. If it's a keli, you could weigh it and it could be exchanged for money. Is it like money? But if it's a gold coin, even though they don't use gold coins in Yerushalayim, they do use gold coins in Tel Aviv. I mean, you used to be able to walk into a bar and get a drink with a gold coin.
Forget that. You used to
Remember that?
You had an example before.
I don't.
Probably bring this at one time with the mink coat. So she keeps the mink coat.
No, he gets it.
He gets it.
Yeah.
But that lowers the value.
No, he gets it. But first of all, it's considered that it wears out. We've been learning all along what they talk about worn out garments. So worn out garments are not specifically listed. So that was a machlokas. But technically, he gets it. If she took it, he can't take it back. But if she moved out without taking it, it
Doesn't have to give her.
It's Son Barzel. He has to return the value, the diminished value. That means
Let's move on. Okay. Okay. All right. Let's move on.
The same trick is don't get divorced, then you don't die, and then none of this comes up.
Amar Rabbi Yanai. So he's giving other examples. V'samim shel Antiochia harei hein kiksafim. The exchange of spices in Antioch, that is like cash.
So you're
Okay, it was
increasing.
a big market there in spices, so that has
That'll make
one
a lot of
impact. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Gimalim shel Aravia, Isha gova parna mehem. Okay, if she has brings into the dowry Arabian camels, okay, then she is able to get a larger amount of money as part of the ksuba. Okay, parna, by the way, again, Corin had a discussion on that phrase. Okay,
One hump.
no, it discussed the fact that why that was a Persian word and used here as opposed to other
Hebrew word.
language, as opposed to the regular language that the Gemara uses.
'Cause
Okay.
we're in Bovel.
All right. Yeah, but we've often seen that sometimes Greek words come into the Gemara. We don't often see that Persian words come into the Gemara. Okay, but that's the point. Okay, Amar Rav Papi, says Rav Papi. Okay, his follows. Hani totabe. Okay, debe machse. What about the robes that come from the location of Beimachse? Isha gova parnamehem. Again, that must be a fancy kind of clothing, and so therefore,
Contain sacks.
okay. No, we didn't get to the sacks yet.
Sake.
No, that's next. No, we didn't. We're not there yet.
Oh, you're
Isha,
talking about the fancy.
right?
clothing from the
Totave
house.
de Beimachse Isha gova parnamehem. Next, Va'amar Rav Papi. He says, Hani sake de Rodea, or the sacks from Rodea. Va'ashle de Kam Chovina, or the ropes from Kam Chovina. Isha gova parnamehem. Again, these are other examples of items
Sorry.
of
Did
value.
Cohen describe what they are?
No.
Oh, it
No.
still doesn't either.
Okay. What happens? Amar Rava, this is Rava. Mereish Hava Amina Hani Arnake de Mechoza. Initially, says Rava, I thought that the money bags that were found in Mechoza, okay, that in that area, Isha gova parnamehem. That again, if she brought those in as part of the dowry, okay, that would affect, okay, everything, the ketubah, etc. Ma'itama, what was the reasoning of Rava's thinking? Asmachitaihu alaihu, because they relied on them as almost as commercial use, the same way as a basis of, like real estate was used for commercial
As
backgrounds.
collateral on
Okay,
loans.
lanes and things like that. Kevan de chazai de shakle laho v'nafke. Since I saw, he says, that they took it and they give it out, they spend it. V'chim mashche ara zavne baho. Okay, and if they then and they use that then for pledges or for land, okay, and they would buy the land. Okay, Amina asmachaytahu arahu, and therefore I realized that what happens is that when they find land, they use that money to buy the land. That it's not those sacks of coins. That's the underlying money, a basis for the transactions, but it's mishkanta, it's for liens, or if it's things like that.
Initially, they would let the woman get her kasuba in mamish cash, but then they found that the women's were immediately purchasing land, which is more secure and
Yeah,
would
more
grow
secure, right.
profit. So they changed the rules and they said that the kasuba has to be paid in land, so she doesn't have the trouble
that
of
Rashi?
swapping it.
Is that Rashi?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's go on to our new Mishnah. Okay, we can now get to
The Engavas Elam in Hakarka.
Okay, all right. I'll check Rashi later. All right, Matnitna, new Mishnah. Hamasiyat bito stam. One who has married off his daughter without specifying the amount clearly in the dowry. Okay, lo yifchot la mi chamishim zuz. It should not be less than 50 zuz. what happens? Pasak, okay, lachnisa aruma, okay, then that seems that he's pledged, okay, to the future son-in-law, okay. In other words, he's made the agreement as part of this marriage that the father of the daughter does not have to provide her with clothing for that. Well, clothing is what the Koran said, okay? Does not have to provide her with clothing, new clothes, to when she goes into this marriage, okay? Lachnisa aruma. Okay, so you could, Koran, that could be that it could be provide her with any kinds of
No,
benefits.
if he doesn't say anything whatsoever, then the minimum is 50. But if he says, take my daughter, but I can't give you a nickel, then she goes in and it's allegorical. She goes in naked, meaning without any.
Well,
she has clothing on.
well,
We're not
of course
just
she has
go to a
clothing
wedding.
on, but he's not providing her
With
money to
anything.
buy new clothing to go into the marriage.
That's a metaphor. It's not
Well,
literal.
that's, you have one shot, I found a different one, that's all. Okay, lo yomar habal, but the husband cannot say, kashe'achnisena leveiti achasena biksuti. When she enters my home,
Then I'll
that's when I'll start getting her, giving her food or sustenance or provide her with clothing. Okay, ella mechasa v'oda b'veit aviha. But he must provide her with the clothing while then she is
she's still in a room.
in the house of her father. V'chein hamasi et hayetoma. And likewise, if somebody is in charge of the charity fund, where they provide for orphans, particularly female orphans, okay? And he marries, and he's arranging for the marriage of a female orphan. Lo yifchot la michamishim zuz im yesh bakis. He cannot give her anything less than 50 zuz, so long as that's there in the charity
That's a period.
coffers.
Im yesh lo,
Okay.
then she can get
Okay.
both
Im-
your parts.
It depends. Okay, im yesh, right? Mefarnasino ta lafik voda. Otherwise, he has to provide for her according to her social status. Okay,
Which is even much more.
well, it could be more. Amara Abaye says Abaye the following: Chamishim zuze pshite. We're talking about what could be called the local or the provincial coins, and not what was called the Tyrian coins. Okay,
These are
because
base metal.
okay, because the provincial coins only had 1/8 as much silver as the Tyrian coins. Okay, Mimai are based on what? Midikatani Sefer, based on what was taught at the end, namely of the Mishnah. Im yesh bakis mefarnasin, right? Mefarnasin ota lefik voda, says that if there is that amount of money in the charity coffers, then he has to provide her based on her status, right? Va'amrina, and we say my kis. What do we mean here when we say the charity coffers? Amar Rechava, he says, Arnike shelt staka. We're talking about the saddlebags, the containers for charity. V'isal, yeah.
Pardon my ignorance. What is the technical term for dowry? What is the Hebrew term for dowry? Is there one?
the
Nadi.
okay, that
Is it
That's-
mentioned in the Torah, the idea of dowry?
Yes,
Yes.
In the Torah Shiktsah?
yes. With Rivka,
right,
her
we got
family
The
gave her-
Maharos.
that could be. We
when-
got a
when
Baal
Rivka
Koreh here
left
that might
to-
help us.
To go marry Yitzchak, the family gave her stuff to take. That's
Right.
the dowry.
That's the concept.
So, but there's no.
I don't know if if we find a technical term. That could be why they use the Persian term. Okay, all right,
I mean, it's just
Hey.
it's just a gift.
okay. Ve'isa kadatan chamishim zuz mamash, he says by, and if we think that he was giving her actually 50 zuz, in other words, of the Tyrian style, right? Im yesh bakis Kam yahavinanla. If they have that much money in the charity coffers, how much are they really going to give her? Elashmamina chamishim zuzei pshite. Therefore, we learn from this that it is 50 provincial coins. Right? Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Yatom v'yatoma shabau lihitparnes. Okay, a male or a female orphan that needs sustenance, right, from the charity, of course. Mefarnasin et hayatoma, we provide for the female orphan first. V'achar kach mefarnasin et hayatom, and afterwards we provide for the male orphan. Why? Mipnei shahaish darko lachzor al haptachim. Why? Because it's more common, I'm going to say, for a man or a male to go around to the doorways, in other words, to beg for money. Ve'ein isha darkar lachzor. And it's not customary for a woman to go around to begging. All right? Yatom v'yatoma, as we go to the new Amud. A male or a female orphan, what? Shabolina say that comes to marry. Okay.
Money.
All right. And what are they? And they have to be provided from the charity. Okay. For this marriage. Right. We're right. The new Amud 67b. Okay. Masi'in et hayatoma. We marry off the female orphan. V'achar kach masi'in et hayatom. And afterwards we marry off the male orphan. Mipnei shebushata shel isha meruba mishal ish. Why? Because the embarrassment of a woman not being married is greater for a woman than for a man. Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. As we continue now, we'll go through as much of the Amud as we can. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Yatom Shabali say, okay, a male orphan who comes to marry, what is expected to be provided for him? Okay, from the charity funds of the community. And I mention it that way because if we get to that point in the Gemara, we'll have another piece to deal with there. Sochrin lo bayit, we rent him a house. Uma'atzi'in lo mita, and we arrange for him a bed. V'kol klei tashmisho, and everything that's necessary for the bed. Okay? Right? All of that. V'achar kach masi'in lo isha. And afterwards, we marry him off to a woman. Shneamar, as it says, based on the pasuk, Dai machsaro asher yechsar lo. Okay? Basically, sufficient for his need and that which he wants.
That's what she's
Okay.
lacking.
So they also find them a job, because how is he going to support it after?
Good questions there. Okay, let's see. Dai machsaro, we darshan the pasuk. Okay, first, sufficient for his need. Zehabayit, that's the house. Asher yachsar, which he's missing or wants. Zemat mita v'shulchan, that's the bed and the table. Lo, for him, zo isha, that's the woman. Okay, v'chein hu omer, and that's why we say, based on another pasuk, how do we know that lo stands for finding him a wife? Eseh lo, ezer kenegdo. We darshan the common word. Okay, find him somebody appropriate for him. Tanu Rabbanan, and the rabbis taught a different drasha for that pasuk. Dai machsaro, okay, and sufficient for him. Ata mitzaveh alav leparnaso, that you're commanded to help sustain him. V'iyata mitzaveh alav leosro, but you're not commanded to give him money to make him wealthy. Okay? Asher yechsar lo, which he is wanting. Afilu suslik rekov alav, even for him to ride on a horse. Ve'eved la rutz lefanav, and a servant to run in before him.
This would be a wealthy person. who went
Okay.
bankrupt.
All right, well, we'll see. Amru alav al Hillel Hazaken, and they used to say about Hillel the elder, Shalakach la'ani ben tovim, that he acquired for a poor person who was the from a well-to-do family. In other words, he originally was well-to-do and became poor, right? Echad sus lirkov alav ve'eved larutz lefanav. That's right, one horse for him to ride on and a servant to run before him. And what happened? Pam echat lo matza eved larutz lefanav. On one occasion, he didn't find a servant to run in front of him. V'ratz lefanav shlosha milin. And the Rabbi Akiva the elder actually himself, Hillel the elder himself actually ran 3 miles before him. Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Ma'aseh ba'anshe Galil ha'elyon. An incident occurred with the people in the Upper Galilee. Shelakhu la'ani ben tovim, that they acquired for a poor person who was of good heritage, right? Echad mitzipurei litra basar b'chol yom. Okay, and he had come from Sepphoris. Okay, what did they get for him? A liter, which was a liquid measure, okay, of meat every day. So the Gemara says, litra basar mai revuta, a liter of meat, so much. In other words, how that's a very large amount. Amar Rav Huna, said Rav Huna, litra basar mishel ofot. It was the equivalent of a meat that was fowl, poultry. That was still pretty expensive.
No, it's much more expensive.
Okay, all right.
This is much more expensive than beef.
All right, well, we'll see. V'ibayat ema, or if you want, I would say, belitra basar mamash, or maybe it was a liter of actual red meat. Okay, so that's what tells us that at that time, a liter of poultry was certainly more expensive than a liter of red meat. Okay,
That's surprising, but if one was the cheapest carving you bought was from, and that was a fowl, a bird.
No, but that was just a tiny little bird. Here we're
But the
talking
point
about a
is,
great big
it
goose
doesn't
or a
Okay.
brace of pheasant.
a korban often could be, for example, a pigeon.
I said that, I'm not
Right.
saying no, but it's, we have a grade, if there's an army, what does he bring? What he can afford, and the cheapest thing was a pigeon.
Right. Okay, so here, but here what they're talking about,
Saying that the meat was cheaper than the.
right, but,
A pigeon is cheaper than a whole animal. But
okay,
if you're going pound for pound of edible material, fowl in those days was much more expensive than red meat. In the United States, prior to World War II, chicken was twice the price of meat. It's only when they started doing this mass producing chickens that they became cheap. That's why one of the presidents said a chicken in every pot. That means everybody will be rich because chicken was reserved for special occasions.
maybe, I don't know. Okay, belitra basar mamash, okay. Rav Ashi Amar Hatam, okay, Kfar Katan Haya, that was a small village. B'chol Yoma Hava Mafsidei Chiyuta Amtulutai. And every day they would lose. In other words, they would slaughter an animal,
And nobody would take the rest.
okay, and that was the case. Right. Hahu da'ata lekame de Rabbi Nechemia. Again, more stories about the issue of the theme of tzedakah. Okay? All right, so a person came before Rabbi Nechemia, Amarle, and she said to him, Bameh ata so'ed, what do you normally eat? Amarle, bebasar shamen v'yayin yashan. I normally eat fatty meat and old wine. Okay? Right? V'tzoncha shetegalgel imi ba'adashim. Is it your will that you would like to join me, I'm going to say, in eating lentils? Gagel imo ba'adashim umeit. The fellow who was used to the fancier meal ate the lentils and he died. What happens? Amar, he said, Oy leo lezeh shahargu Nechemia. Woe to the one that Nechemia killed. Adraba, maybe the opposite is true. Oy lo lenechemia shahargu lezeh mebayeli. or woe to Nehemiah because of the fact that he
This
killed
guy died.
somebody. That's what happened. Ella rather, Ihu hu de lo ibayele, but rather it was he himself, the person, okay, that didn't need that fancy foodstuffs, lifnuke nafshe kulihai, in order to pamper himself, so to speak, so much. Okay, in other words, he got used to such a high quality diet. Then when he ends,
wasn't paying for it,
okay.
he might as well go for the gold.
okay, hahu da'ata lekami de Rabba, and a person came before Rabba, Amarlo, and he said to him, "B'mata so'ed, what do you normally eat?" Amarlo, b'tarnagolet petuma, I normally eat fattened chickens, okay, fattened hens, v'yayin yashan, and old wine. Okay, Amarle, he said to him, v'lo chiyasht leduchka de tzibura, and aren't you concerned? Look at the pressure that you're putting on the community,
To spend
okay,
so much on
right?
gold.
Amarle, he said to him, Atu mididhu ka'achilna, okay? And since you've brought it to them, that's how they should feed you, okay? Midarachmana ka'achilna, okay? His attitude was, no, it comes from Hashem. It doesn't, the community is just the messenger, so to speak, okay? As taught in the following Ditanina, as taught, Eine kol elecha yisaberu, vata notem lahem et ochlam beito, that Hashem provides it in the appropriate time, your meal. Beitam lo ne'amar, in their time, that's not what the pasuk says. Kela beito, his time. Milamed shekol echad v'echad noten HaKadosh Baruch Hu parnasato beito, telling us that for each individual, Hashem gives them their parnasa at the appropriate time. Adahachi, says the story, continues, Atai achte de Rava. At that point, who should walk in? But the sister of Rava. And not only that, Delo chazyale tleiser shane. She hadn't seen him for 13 years. And what did she bring him? Va'achale tarnagolet petuma v'yayin yashan. And she walked in bringing him a fattened hen and old wine. Okay? Amar mai dekama. All right, so he asks, what situation? Amar le ne'eneti lach kum echo. It's as if Hashem answered your prayers, right? New Braita. Tanu Rabbanan, a new Braita. Okay, ein lo ve'eno rotzeh lit parnes. If he doesn't have it and he's not able to,
This is his question.
right?
Zev asked
Right.
this earlier.
right? They're not able to sustain himself. Notnim lo l'shum halva'a. We give it to him as if it appears as a loan. V'chozrin v'notnim lo l'shum matana. And then afterwards, we come back and give it to him as a gift. Divrei Rabbi Meir. That's the view of Rabbi Meir. V'chachamim omrim, but the sages say, notnim lo l'shum matana. We give it to him first as a gift. V'chozrin v'notnim lo l'shum halva'a. And then afterwards we come back and arrange it as a loan. L'shum matana. First as a gift, says the Gemara. Ha lo shakel, he won't take it. Amar Rava, says Rava, liftoach lo l'shum matana. You open, you begin the discussion as if it's going to be as a gift. Okay, that's how you start. Yeah, okay, that's how you start. And if he refuses, then you make it a loan and you don't collect. That's why it becomes a gift. Okay, going on. Amar Rav Papa, this is Rav Papa. Lachar mita, you collect it after his death. Rabbi Shimon Omer, yesh lanu, yesh lo, ve'eno rotzeh lit parnes. If he has the money to sustain himself, but he chooses not to, he's stingy. Ein is kakimo. We don't associate.
You don't get
We don't
Become
become.
doesn't get. They don't give him that stuff.
We don't
doesn't give him
join
the
with
money.
him. We don't do. Ein lo ve'eino rotzeh litparnes. If he doesn't have it and he's not able to sustain himself, omrim lo, we say to him, haba mashkon, okay, v'tol kadei shetazuach da'ato alav. Take it as a kind of a
Bring
loan,
us collateral and
okay?
we'll lend you the
And
money.
afterwards, right, this is to make the person feel better, okay, right? Shada'ato, shatazo da'ato alav, that his mind will be more
And
comfortable,
he'll spend it on.
okay? Tanu Rabbanan, and we have another Braita based on the pasuk Ha'avei ta'avivenu lo, right? For with double lashon there, first language, right? Ha'aveit zeh she'en lo ve'eino rotzeh litparnes. One who doesn't have it, but he doesn't want to be sustained by the community. Shnotnim lo l'shum halva'ah, that we give it to him as a loan. V'chozrin v'notnim lo l'shum matana. Then afterwards we come back and make it as a gift. Ta'avitenu. And the second language in the pasuk, zeh sheyesh lo ve'eino rotzeh litparnes. One who does have the money, but chooses not to support himself, right? Shenotnim lo l'shum matana. We give it to him as a gift. V'chozrin v'nifra'in himenu la'achar mita. We collect it after he's deceased. Okay? Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's the view of Rabbi Yehuda. V'chachamim omrim. But the sages say as follows: Yesh lo ve'eino rotzeh litparnes. If he has it and he doesn't want to sustain himself, ein nizkakin lo. We don't become involved with him. Ve'ela rather, ma'ani mikayem ta'avitenu. How then would the rabbis explain the second lashon there? Okay, Dibra Torah b'lashon b'nei Adam, that the Torah is talking in everyday language. Okay, all right. So what happens? Okay, it's 9:25. Okay, we've got a long story here, which I'm going to try to move through somewhat quickly, even if we don't finish. Mar Ukva havya ani b'shiva vute. For Mar Ukva, there was a poor person in his neighborhood. Dahava ragil koyoma, deshade le arba'a zuze, but sinor dedasha. And every day Mar Ukva would come by, and he would toss in 4 zuz to the hinge of the doorway. Okay? Yom echad amar izu. Okay? All right, so one day what happens? I'll go. Ichazei man de ka'avid behahu tibuta. And the person who was receiving the money says, one day I'll go and I'll see who's being so benevolent for me. Okay? Hahu Yoma, Nagha Le. All right, one day he was delayed, Rab Marzutra. Le, Lemar Ukva, he was delayed. The Bay Midrasha, delayed at the base Midrash.
He never showed up.
Okay, he didn't come. What happened? Acha the Betayu Bahade. And his wife, gave it the money in place. Okay? Kevan decha zihua deka matzle le ledasha. When he saw that the door handle was turning, money was coming in nevertheless. All right? Nafak batrayim. He ran after them. Rahut mekame. They ran away from him. Okay? Because they didn't want to be seen. Aile lahahu atuna dahava gurufa nora. And they ran into an area where there was a furnace that the coals had been raked over, but there was still some embers there, still burning someone. Okay, right? How ka miklayan kare, hava ka miklayan kare. It was singeing Mar Zutra's feet. Okay, Amrale, and his wife said to him, Shekol karech. Otive karaai.
She was not burning.
Right, her feet were not singeing, and put your feet on top of mine, because mine weren't getting singed. We're going to see why, and that's where we're going to finish today. Okay, Chalash date, he was embarrassed, he was weakened that he was being burned, but she wasn't. Right? What happened? Amra le, she said to him, Ana shachichna begoya debete. I am usually found inside the house. Umikarva ahanaite. And what happens is my assistance is ready. In other words,
People come
I
to the
give them
door.
food when they come to the house, whereas you
You
only give them money.
and has to
Okay?
take
And then he has to do that. Okay, umay kuli hai. Why all that? The Amar Mazutra, Bartuvia, etc. Amar Rav. So that's where we'll pick up tomorrow. Why? Because he says Va'amre la Amar Rav Huna Bar Bizna, etc. etc. Okay, in other words, her mitzvah, in a sense, was greater because she gave them foodstuffs directly as opposed to the money. And we'll pick up there tomorrow.
Right.
So that my wife is more charitable than I, burns me up.
These are long amudim, gentlemen, I'm telling you. So,
Use rubber sole shoes.
Dave, you barely had sandals. 12:30 till 2 is their long and moving.